The alien bar on planet Varnus was loud, hot, and full of strange laughter. Miners, traders, and soldiers from a dozen worlds gathered there after a long day to drink, shout, and forget. In the corner, a human named Eli Kane sat with a dusty shirt and a cracked helmet beside him. He had worked 10 hours digging through redstone for crystal ore. His muscles ached, his throat was dry, and his credit card was almost empty. When the alien bartender refused him another drink, Eli joked, half laughing, "I'll marry the ugliest woman in this sector if it means I get one more cup." The words came out too loud. The entire bar went silent. From the far end, a deep growl filled the room. A massive figure stood, a four-armed warrior with bronze skin, glowing scars, and armor made of old battles. His name was Commander Tirak, a veteran of 50 wars. He turned slowly, all four fists clenched. The ground seemed to tremble when he walked. "What did you just say, human?" Tirak's voice was low, sharp, and dangerous. Eli blinked, realizing too late what he had done. The crowd of aliens backed away, forming a wide circle. Some whispered, "He's dead." Others muttered, "No one insults Tirak's bloodline." Tirak's glowing yellow eyes locked on Eli. "You speak of ugliness," he said, his breath like thunder. "You speak of shame. Then you insult my daughter." At first, Eli thought it was a joke. "Wait, what?" "No, I didn't mean violence," Tirak roared, slamming one hand down on a table. The metal bent like soft clay. Then he pointed toward the back of the room. "Come forward, Vera." From the shadows stepped a tall alien woman with 4 slender arms and dark purple skin. Her right cheek carried a long scar that shimmered like silver in the neon light. She wore a cloak of old cloth, her eyes sharp yet sad. The crowd went quiet again. "This is my daughter," Tirak said proudly. "You called her ugly." Eli looked at her, and for a second he saw not ugliness but strength. Her stance was proud, her gaze unbroken. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't weak. She stood like a warrior who had been through fire and refused to bow. Eli opened his mouth to speak, but Tirak's deep laughter cut through the air. "You want to speak of honor? Then prove it. You want my daughter? Beat me first." The crowd gasped. No one challenged Tirak and lived. He was a legend. His arms could crush stone. His claws could rip metal. Eli took a slow breath. He had fought before, not in wars, but in mining riots and back alley fights. He knew fear, but something in Vera's calm eyes stopped him from backing away. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was human stubbornness, he said quietly. "Fine. Name the time." The laughter that followed shook the roof. Some aliens slammed their cups in rhythm, chanting, "Human fool! Human fool!" But others, especially the younger ones, looked curious. They had seen humans work hard, survive harsh planets, and fix impossible machines. Maybe this one was different. Tirak leaned down until his face was inches from Eli's. "Tomorrow, at dawn, Arena of Dust," Eli nodded once. "Then I'll see you there." He turned to leave, but the crowd parted slowly, whispering as he passed. One alien shouted, "You'll be bones by morning." Another laughed. "Maybe the ugliest woman will bury you herself." Outside, the night wind of Varnus was dry and cold. The twin moons shone like pale eyes above the red desert. Eli walked alone toward the mining camp, his steps echoing on the metal road. His heart was pounding, but his face stayed calm. He thought of home, of Earth far away where people joked to hide fear. He thought of the look in Vera's eyes, not anger, but something else, maybe curiosity. And he wondered what kind of man her father had been before the wars. In the camp, other humans stared at him in shock. One asked, "You really challenged that monster?" Eli smiled faintly. "Didn't mean to, but I guess I have to show up now." He sat by the fire, sharpening an old blade, though he knew it wouldn't matter against a 4-armed warlord. Around him, silence fell. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. Somewhere in the distance, a deep drum began to beat, the sound of the coming duel. And as Eli stared into the flames, he whispered to himself, all this because of one stupid joke. But part of him couldn't help smiling. Maybe this was more than a joke now. Maybe it was fate knocking on his door. Tomorrow, the human miner would face a legend, and the whole planet would watch. The morning sky over Varnus burned like molten copper. The air was heavy with dust, and the twin suns had just begun to rise above the cliffs. At the edge of the mining colony stood the Arena of Dust, an ancient circle carved from red stone. It was where old warriors tested their honor and young ones met their death. Crowds had gathered early. Miners, soldiers, alien traders, even children sitting on tall rocks to see the strange fight. Word had spread fast. A human had challenged Commander Tarak. No one believed Eli Kane would survive. Some came to see blood. Others came to see courage, rare as rain on this dry world. Eli walked toward the arena gate wearing his torn work clothes and carrying only a simple mining blade. His face was calm, though his heart thudded like a hammer. Inside, drums pounded a slow rhythm. The rhythm of war. Tarak stood in the center, his forearms crossed, his armor gleaming gold beneath the sunlight. His massive shadow stretched long over the sand. When he saw Eli, he gave a deep, rumbling laugh. "So the little human came," Tarak said. "I thought fear would keep you in your hole." Eli shrugged. "Fear's part of the job description when you dig near molten rock." The crowd chuckled. Even Tarak's lip twitched, and a flicker of respect quickly hidden. A horn sounded long and sharp. The fight began. Tarak moved first, and faster than Eli expected. Two of his upper arms struck like lightning while his lower hands reached to grab. Eli rolled aside, barely escaping the hit. Dust filled the air. The alien roared, swinging again. His strikes were strong enough to crush stone, but Eli didn't try to match power with power. He ducked, sidestepped, and used the sand to blind his opponent. Each move was careful, calculated. The crowd shouted insults at first, calling him a coward. But soon the tone began to change. The human was still standing after 10 minutes, longer than any challenger before him. Eli noticed something strange. One of Tarak's lower arms was slower, its movement stiff. A scar ran down from shoulder to elbow, an old injury. That was the weakness. But attacking it directly would be dishonorable. Instead, Eli focused on tiring him out. Every time Tarak swung, Eli moved just far enough to make him miss. Dust and sweat covered both their faces. The red sun rose higher. Finally, Tarak caught Eli by the arm and threw him hard into the ground. Pain shot through Eli's back. The crowd gasped. The warrior raised one fist to strike again, but stopped. Eli didn't beg or cry. He looked straight into the alien's eyes and said, "If you wanted me dead, you'd have done it already." That sentence made the arena go silent. Even Tarak paused, his 4 fists frozen midair. "You're not here to fight," Tarak said slowly. "Then why did you come?" Eli pushed himself up, breathing hard. "Because I insulted your daughter. I can't change that. But I can show you I didn't mean it. Humans joke when they're tired, not when they hate." For a long time, no one spoke. Then from the stands, a soft voice broke the silence. It was Vera. She had come to watch, her face half covered by a hood. "Father," she said, "he has lasted longer than any of your champions." Tarak's golden eyes narrowed. He lowered his fists. "He lasted because I allowed it," but his tone no longer carried rage. It carried thought, curiosity, even pride. Eli wiped blood from his lip and stood tall. "If this is how you test your daughter's worth, then maybe you've forgotten something. Strength isn't only in muscle," the crowd murmured. It was a dangerous thing to say, yet there was truth in his words. Tarak let out a heavy breath and stepped back. "You speak boldly, human, but words don't win wars. Tomorrow you'll face the pit of blades, the test of courage. Survive it and maybe I'll believe you." Eli stared at him. "You mean there's another round?" The alien's grin widened. "There is always another round." As the crowd cheered, Eli stumbled out of the arena, sore but alive. Behind him, Vera's eyes followed, a quiet flicker of interest replacing her anger. She had seen fear in men before, but this one, he had none. When night fell, Eli sat by a small fire again, wrapping his bruises with cloth. The wind howled outside the camp, carrying the echo of alien laughter and drums. He stared into the flames, whispering, "Pit of blades, huh? Sounds fun." For the first time since he arrived on Varnus, Eli smiled. He had no idea what the next trial would be. But he knew one thing. He wasn't done yet. The desert stars watched quietly as a human prepared to defy a legend. Night settled quietly over the desert of Varnus. The twin suns had sunk below the cliffs and cold air swept through the mining camp. The stars here were strange, blue and green flickering like eyes in the sky. Eli Kane sat by a dying fire, his arm wrapped in bandages, every muscle sore from the fight. The laughter and cheers of the day had faded, leaving only the hum of wind and the crackle of embers. He stared into the flames, thinking about what had just happened. He had faced a 4-armed warlord and lived, barely. He didn't win, but he didn't die either, and that on Varnus meant something. Behind him, a quiet sound made him turn. A soft step on sand. Someone was approaching, careful and slow. Eli reached for his blade out of habit, but stopped when he saw her. It was Vera. She stood at the edge of the firelight, her cloak drawn around her shoulders. The soft glow lit her scarred face and dark violet skin. Her four hands were empty, palms open, a gesture of peace. Eli blinked, surprised. Didn't think I'd get visitors after today. I am not most visitors, Vera said, her voice calm but heavy with pride. You are lucky my father let you live. Eli gave a tired grin. I think he's just waiting for the next round. Her eyes flickered, almost like she was fighting a smile. She looked at the bandages on his arm and then placed a small metal container on the ground beside him. Medicine, she said simply. For the wounds. Eli raised an eyebrow. From the same people trying to kill me tomorrow? Vera's gaze softened. You faced my father with courage. That earns respect even here. For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried dust through the camp, whispering around them. Eli finally broke the silence. You don't seem much like him. She tilted her head slightly. No, I'm not. Her voice dropped lower. Once I fought beside him. I was strong. I believed in honor and war. But then came the ambush. I saved a village and lost my face for it. Her fingers brushed the long scar on her cheek. My people called me marked. My betrothed left me. My father swore no man would ever touch me again unless he could defeat him in combat. Eli listened quietly. He didn't try to pity her. He only said, you saved lives. That's not shame. Where I'm from, scars like that mean you stood your ground. Vera's eyes lifted to meet his. They were sharp, like blades, but deep, almost human. And where you were from. Do men joke about ugliness? Eli exhaled and looked at the fire. Only when we're trying not to show how tired we are. My joke was stupid, but I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Vera studied him for a long time. You spoke carelessly, yet you faced death for it, that is. Strange, he chuckled softly. Humans do strange things when their pride gets poked. The silence stretched again. She sat across from him, her cloak brushing the sand. The firelight flickered between them like a heartbeat. Eli watched her, noticing how the scar didn't make her ugly at all. It made her real. There was a calm power in the way she moved, in the way she spoke. He wondered how many times she'd been mocked, how many battles she had endured alone. After a while, she said quietly, Tomorrow's test. It's not like today. The pit of blades doesn't test strength. It tests fear. Eli frowned. Fear? She nodded. The walls move. The air cuts. The light itself can blind you. Warriors enter to prove their spirit. None of your kind ever have. Eli poked the fire with a stick, thinking, then it's about time someone did. Vera's expression changed, part disbelief, part admiration. You are either brave or very foolish. Maybe both, he said with a grin. She stood slowly, her cloak swaying with the wind. Then may your courage hold, human, because if you fall, my father will bury you himself. As she turned to leave, Eli called out, Vera. She stopped. He said softly, You're not ugly. Not even close. For a brief second, her shoulders froze. Then, without looking back, she whispered, You see with strange eyes, Eli Kane. The wind carried her words away as she vanished into the darkness. Eli sat there long after she was gone, staring into the glowing ashes. Something inside him shifted, a feeling he hadn't known in years. Respect, curiosity, maybe even something gentler. Above him, the stars shimmered over the silent dunes. Tomorrow he would face death again, but tonight he had seen the truth behind the warrior's daughter's eyes, and somehow that scared him more than the pit of blades ever could. The next morning, the desert was silent, too silent. Even the wind seemed afraid of what was about to happen. The pit of blades waited in the valley below, a dark hole carved into ancient stone older than the colony itself. No one knew who built it. Some said it was a temple from forgotten times. Others said it was a place where cowards were sent to die. Now it was used as a test, and a cruel one. The warrior who entered either walked out a legend, or never walked out at all. Eli Kane stood before the pit's jagged entrance, his body still aching from the last fight. His bandages were tight, his heart steady. Around him a crowd gathered once again. Aliens of every kind filled the cliffs above, chanting, waiting to see if the foolish human would die today. Commander T-Rock stood on a stone platform above the pit, his arms crossed. His golden armor caught the morning light. His deep voice echoed through the canyon. Yesterday you showed strength, Tarak said, but strength means nothing without courage. Enter the pit of blades. Come out alive and you will have earned my respect. Eli looked up, his voice dry but steady. And if I don't come out? Tarak's grin widened. Then the desert will remember your bones. The crowd roared as Eli stepped toward the entrance. The air grew colder the deeper he went. The sunlight faded behind him, swallowed by darkness. Only the sound of his boots on stone remained. Then a faint metallic hum filled the tunnel. The walls began to move. Blades, hundreds of them, slid out from the stone, spinning and slicing the air. Thin beams of light flashed between them, turning the narrow passage into a maze of death. The blades didn't move randomly. They danced in rhythm like music. Eli stopped, took a deep breath, and listened. He had heard something like this before, the pattern of machines deep in the mining tunnels back on Earth. Every trap had a rhythm. Every danger had a pulse. He whispered, "All right, let's dance." He stepped forward carefully, his eyes following the movement of each spinning blade. He timed his steps to the hum. One step, pause, duck, roll, jump. The air sliced past his ear, cutting a lock of hair. Sparks flew where metal kissed stone. From above, the crowd could only hear the echoes of steel and the roar of shifting gears. Tarak watched with arms folded, saying nothing. Minutes passed. Then came a loud crash. One of the traps triggered. Dust shot out of the pit's entrance and the crowd gasped. "He's dead," someone shouted. But then, from the shadows, a voice echoed, "Not yet." Eli crawled out of the smoke, blood running down his arm, but still alive. He wiped his forehead and kept moving forward. His clothes were torn, but his eyes burned with focus. Halfway through, the floor shifted beneath him, plates of steel turning like gears. One wrong step would drop him into spinning blades below. He steadied himself, breathing through the panic. Think, Eli, not faster, smarter. He spotted a pattern. 3 plates clicked in rhythm every 2 seconds. He counted, stepped only when the sound matched. Slowly, he crossed the moving floor, each step feeling like walking over death itself. When he finally reached the end, a final wall of blades blocked his exit. They spun in all directions, faster and faster. For a moment, even Eli doubted himself. His hands shook, sweat dripping into his eyes. Then he heard something faint, a hum, a gap in the rhythm, a single heartbeat of stillness every few seconds. That was it. He waited, breathed, and jumped through the narrow space just as the blades paused. He hit the ground on the other side, rolled, and fell onto the hot sand outside. The crowd above went silent. Dust cleared, and the human was lying there, alive, breathing, smiling. Tarak's eyes widened. Slowly, the warlord raised one of his 4 hands and pounded his chest once, a gesture of respect. The crowd followed, slamming their fists to their hearts. The noise echoed across the desert. Eli sat up, coughing, looking up at the cheering aliens. "Was that the easy part?" he shouted hoarsely. Tarak chuckled for the first time, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. "You live, human. You passed the second trial." From behind him, Vera stood silent but smiling faintly, pride flickering in her eyes. She whispered something only the wind could hear. "You truly have no fear." As Eli staggered to his feet, bruised and bleeding, the crowd's chant grew louder. "Human! Human! Human!" And high above them all, under the burning suns of Varnus, a warlord began to wonder if his challenge had turned into something far greater than a test. Because for the first time in many years, Commander Tarak felt something rare, admiration, and for the first time in her life, Vera's heart began to hope. The celebration after the pit of blades lasted deep into the night. Alien drums pounded across the dunes, echoing through the colony. Fires burned high, and creatures of every kind chanted Eli Kane's name. The human miner had done what no warrior in 50 years had managed. He survived the pit. But Eli didn't feel like a hero. He sat alone at the edge of the camp, staring into a bowl of strange, glowing fruit someone had handed him. His hands were still shaking from the traps, his arm burned from a fresh cut, and his mind couldn't forget the look in Vera's eyes when he crawled out alive. He didn't know what it was, pity, pride, or something else, but it had stayed with him all day. As the fires burned lower, soft footsteps approached again. He didn't need to turn to know it was her. "You're supposed to be celebrating," Eli said quietly. I do not celebrate tests, Vera replied, her voice calm as the night wind. I only honor the ones who pass them. Eli looked up. And how many passed before me? She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the sand. None. The word hung between them like smoke. He leaned back, studying her. You knew I'd almost die in there. I did, she admitted. But you went anyway. That's kind of what humans do, Eli said with a half smile. We do the stupid thing first, then think later. Vera didn't laugh. She stood silently for a moment, her eyes distant, then said, You shouldn't be here. Eli frowned. Because your father wants me gone? Because if you stay, she said softly, you'll see what this place truly is. She sat across from him, her cloak brushing the sand. The firelight flickered across her scar, casting shifting shadows on her face. My father was once a great commander, she began, voice low. Our people followed him through endless wars. He believed in honor above all things. But honor twisted into pride. When I was injured, when this scar marked me, he called it a curse from the gods. My betrothed left me, the soldiers mocked me, and my father swore that no man would ever claim a flawed daughter unless he defeated him in battle. Eli stared into the flames, silent. I've watched him kill dozens of warriors, she said, all to protect his pride. But he doesn't see that it's not protection, it's punishment. For me, for him, Eli's jaw tightened. You mean, he's been fighting because he's ashamed? Her voice trembled just slightly. Because he can't forgive himself. The scar on my face reminds him of the day he failed to protect his own blood. Eli's expression softened. He's not protecting your honor. He's protecting his guilt. Vera looked up sharply, her eyes wide. You speak boldly for a minor. Sometimes minors see more truth underground than kings do on thrones, Eli said quietly. That made her laugh just once, soft, tired, real. You are strange, human, he grinned. You said that yesterday too. Silence fell again, broken only by the hiss of the fire. The night air grew colder, and Vera drew her cloak tighter around her shoulders. For a moment she looked almost fragile, not like the proud daughter of a warlord, but like a woman who'd carried too much for too long. Eli leaned forward, his voice low. You deserve better than to live inside your father's shame. Vera met his gaze. And what would you know of shame? Eli hesitated. The firelight danced in his eyes. Enough, he said finally. I've made mistakes. I've lost people because I spoke when I should have listened. That's why I fought, not to win your father's approval, to show I meant my words weren't from hate. For the first time her expression softened fully. The wall between them cracked. You remind me of the old stories, she whispered. Of warriors who fight for hearts, not thrones. He smiled faintly. Maybe those stories were written by humans. Vera stood then, her voice steady again. Tomorrow the final trial begins. The fight between you and my father will not be like the others. He will not test you this time. He will try to end you. Eli rose too, looking up at her beneath the twin moons. Let him try. She studied him a long moment, then said quietly, If you survive, my father will keep his word. But I warn you, Eli Kane, victory here costs more than blood. And with that, she turned and disappeared into the desert night. Eli watched her go, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. Not fear, not dread, but a kind of determination that burned hotter than any flame. He looked toward the warlord's fortress glowing in the distance and muttered to himself, Then tomorrow I'll fight for more than my life. For the first time, he knew what the battle truly meant. It wasn't about a joke anymore. It was about freeing two hearts trapped by pride. The dawn of the final trial came cold and colorless. The twin suns of Varnus rose slowly over the horizon, staining the desert in shades of blood and gold. Every ridge, every stone, every breath of wind seemed to hold its breath. The entire colony had gathered once again. Warriors, merchants, miners, children, all waiting for the same thing. The duel between the human and the warlord. Eli Kane stood alone in the middle of the arena of dust, where so many had fallen. His hands were wrapped in torn cloth, his shirt ripped and stained. The bruises from the pit still ached, but his heart felt strangely calm. He wasn't there for glory anymore. Not for jokes or pride. He was there to end the curse that bound a father and daughter in silence. Commander Tirak entered through the northern gate, his heavy armor glinting beneath the twin suns. His forearms were bare this time, and no weapons, no shields. His scars shone like battle medals carved deep across his chest and shoulders. When he spoke, his voice rolled across the arena like thunder. No tricks, no traps, no weapons. We fight with spirit alone, Eli nodded. Spirit's all I've got left. The crowd roared as the two faced each other. The drums began again. Slow, deep, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Tarak struck first, his top arm swinging wide while the lower pair reached to grab. Eli ducked, rolled, and countered with a quick strike to the ribs. It was like punching stone. The impact sent pain shooting up his arm. The warlord's laughter echoed across the arena.
You hit like a wind, yeah?
Eli spat blood and grinned. Ever seen a windstorm? The next blow came faster. Dust burst beneath their feet. The ground shook. Eli moved like water, sliding under heavy strikes, using speed where he lacked power. Every dodge, every breath, every scrape of his boots left a mark on the sand. Around them, the crowd grew wild. They had never seen anything like this. A human refusing to yield to a warlord of 4 arms. Eli landed a lucky hit to Tarak's jaw. The giant stumbled, but only for a second. Then the warlord grinned, showing teeth sharp as blades. Better. Eli's lungs burned. His arms trembled. But something kept him going, not anger, not pride. It was the memory of Vera's voice the night before. If you survive, victory will cost more than blood. He could see her now, standing in the crowd, her hood drawn, her eyes locked on the fight. Tarak lunged, all 4 fists swinging. One struck Eli in the chest, knocking him backward. The air left his lungs. He fell to his knees, coughing blood into the dust. The crowd went silent. Even the drums stopped. Tarak stood tall, breathing heavily. You fought well, human. Stay down. Eli looked up, half smiling through the pain. Sorry, not my style. He pushed himself up, legs shaking, arms weak, but his eyes burned with stubborn fire. The same fire that had carried humanity across the stars. Tarak frowned. He had seen that look before, in his own eyes long ago before pride consumed him. Eli charged again, this time not to win, but to stand. Every punch was clumsy. Every dodge was slower, but he refused to stop. The crowd began to chant his name again. Human, human, human. Finally, with one last desperate swing, Eli struck Tarak square in the chest. It wasn't powerful, but it was honest. The kind of hit made from heart, not hate. Tarak staggered backward, breathing hard. His eyes flicked toward his daughter in the stands. For the first time, he saw not a broken child, but the woman she had become. Strong, unyielding, proud. He lowered his arms slowly. Then, with a deep breath, he dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. Enough, the warlord said, voice shaking with emotion. You have shown me what I forgot. Courage without armor. Honor without hate. Eli blinked, panting, unsure if he had truly heard it. Tarak slammed one of his fists against his chest. You win, human. The crowd exploded in cheers. Warriors pounded their weapons against the ground. Dust rose like a storm around them. Vera stepped forward, her cloak fluttering. Tears shimmered in her golden eyes as she looked between her father and Eli. For the first time, Tarak smiled at her without shame. He reached out one massive hand and placed it on Eli's shoulder. You fought for more than pride. You fought for us, Eli managed a weak grin. Guess I finally learned when not to joke. The warlord laughed, deep real laughter, and turned toward the cheering crowd. Let all of Varnus know this human is a warrior. His spirit is my equal. As the sun sank behind the dunes, Eli looked at Vera. She smiled softly, whispering something only he could hear. You didn't just win. You healed what no one else could. And in that moment, surrounded by alien cheers and swirling dust, Eli realized something powerful. Sometimes the greatest battles weren't fought to conquer others, but to free hearts chained by pride. The suns of Varnus were setting when the cheers finally began to fade. The air was thick with dust and smoke from the arena fires. The crowd was still buzzing with disbelief. A human had stood against Commander Tarak and lived. More than that, he had earned the warlord's respect. Eli Kane stood in the center of the arena, his body covered in cuts and bruises, his knees threatening to give way. Every breath burned, but there was a strange peace inside him. The fight was over. The noise, the pain, the fear, all gone. Only silence now. Tarak approached slowly, his heavy footsteps echoing through the dust. The warlord's forearms hung at his sides, his armor cracked and dented. He looked more like an old soldier than a god of war now, proud, tired but human in his own alien way. Before the stunned crowd, Tarak reached to his chest and unclipped a circular metal emblem, a war medallion, forged from the first victory he had ever won. He held it for a moment, staring at the faded symbol etched into its center. Then he extended it toward Eli. "You have fought with honor," Tarak said, his deep voice carrying across the entire arena. "You have shown me what my own people forgot. That strength is not found in power, but in heart. Take this, humankind. From this day you are kin to the house of Tarak." Gasps rippled through the crowd. It was more than a trophy. It was a bond, a symbol of family, of blood and respect. No outsider had ever been given it before. Eli stared at the medallion, then looked up at the warlord. "I don't know if I deserve that," he said quietly. Tarak gave a rare, gentle grin. "No one ever truly deserves honor. They only live in a way that earns it." He placed the medallion in Eli's hand. The metal was warm, heavy, a weight of meaning he hadn't expected. For a second, neither spoke. Then the warlord turned and looked toward the edge of the crowd. "Vera," he called. She stepped forward slowly, her cloak lifting in the wind, her eyes gleaming in the fading light. The crowd fell silent again. For years she had been hidden behind her father's shadow, the scarred daughter of the undefeated warlord. Now she walked into the light with her head held high. Her father bowed his head to her. "I was wrong," he said softly, his voice cracking. "Your scar is not a curse. It is proof that courage lives in my bloodline." For the first time in her life, Vera smiled at him, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a warrior offering forgiveness. "And your pride," she said, "nearly blinded you to it." Tarak's deep laughter rolled through the arena. He nodded once, then turned to the crowd. "Let all who live on Varnus know, the curse of my house is ended. Honor has been restored." The people cheered again, louder than before. But this time it wasn't just for Tarak. It was for all three of them. The warlord who learned humility, the daughter who found her strength again, and the human who brought light into both their lives. As the noise swelled, Eli looked at Vera. She stepped closer until they were only an arm's length apart. The desert wind brushed between them, carrying the scent of dust and steel. She spoke softly so only he could hear. "You came to this planet by accident, yet you changed everything. My father sees me again. The people see me again. Tell me, human, why did you really stay?" Eli smiled faintly, exhaustion heavy in his voice. "Because someone had to stop a war that started with a bad joke." She laughed quietly, a warm, real sound. "You humans are strange." "Yeah," he said. "But we're good at fixing broken things." They stood there for a long moment, watching the suns melt into the horizon. Around them the crowd began to chant again. Not human this time, but warrior. Tarak placed one massive hand on each of their shoulders. "Go, both of you," he said. "Build something worth fighting for." Eli nodded. "Maybe a home that doesn't need an arena." The warlord laughed deeply. And for the first time in many years there was no anger in it. Only peace. As night fell, torches lit the cliffs and music filled the air. The desert stars shimmered above them like a crown. Vera turned to Eli and said softly, "You realize this means you're my father's equal now?" He chuckled. "Equal? I'm still afraid to argue with him." Her smile widened. "Then maybe you are wise too." And as they walked together out of the arena, side by side, the human miner and the warrior's daughter, the crowd of Varnus roared behind them, celebrating not just a victory, but a story that would echo through generations. The tale of the man who joked about ugliness and ended up healing a world's wounded pride. And somewhere deep in the stars, a new legend began and whispered across colonies and bars. Humans, they said, are not the strongest in muscle, but they always fight with heart.